Thank you. First of all, I would like to present a video, a short video, 4-minute video. Then afterwards, I'll make a presentation, very brief presentation of why am I here in Sweden doing this PhD. So enjoy the video.
You need to ask first before you start. We're missing one blue and one. Five. Oh, I think we have.
in the video you saw, you can see that all these gestures carry sound or carry information. Could be by sign language, it could be gestures that produce sound. So these are the main influences in my work that help me to try to begin what I call plastic extension. So as a trained classical guitarist, I did my typical life, concerts, etc. And then at the moment, I tried to search a way to have an alternative presentation or an alternative situation besides the pure musical performance. So, as the word says, performance to take form. So this, if we analyze performare, to take performance, to make form, said why not try to create a different interpretation with plastic. So make it visual or make it physical, but to make an alternative of this musical performance. So this work started in Portugal in 2015. And since then, that's where I did a master's degree with this team. And then now I'm here, very lucky to be here in Sweden and trying to continue this research. And now here I think there are bigger possibilities because we have the labs and we have other departments that are getting involved. Just some weeks ago, I had a conference at the Sustainable Development Forum here in Lund University just to talk about a project that I'm working on with visually and hearing impaired that we'll further discuss, I imagine. And so, yeah, that's it. So the idea is to perform, give an alternative performance as an interpreter, but as the way to create a performance, create a different output outside the pure musical performance.
So that's what you do.
Yes.
Thank you, Bertrand. So thank you, Mike, also for the invitation. It's good to be back at the Inter Arts Center, a place I actually do know fairly well from before. And it's been a pleasure to take part of your materials from the PhD and before. I would say as a general impression and perhaps as a kind of basis for the discussion to follow, I think the artistic aims that you just described and also the practices that you embody and bring into the project are fully convincing and look, very promising and perhaps even exciting. They also have quite a bit of currency in the art world. Yeah. And I will point to some examples of related projects that are recently finished or ongoing. As a way of suggesting that there is potential for a further dialogue between your project and others, and hopefully, presumably, or even most necessarily, that will actually be fruitful. So that's one thing. But I think at the point where you are in a 25% seminar, it's good to think of what's in this project, and are there ways to further enhance, first of all, your own understanding of its potential and its relation to other fields of research, and to consider maybe its modes of knowledge production and so on. So that's the main perspective that I think we'll have in the conversation. Maybe we should go to the first slide and start the slideshow. It's not something with the zoom maybe here. 100, can that be it? Mathematics now. Yes, so the materials that I've taken part of, it also contained a couple of versions of a video that more outlines the work that you've done so far. And I will actually cite some slides from it as part of our conversation. I will, of course, compliment you and say that actually the videos that you made are very communicative and very clear. You know, so it's that's a good thing. And so they gave me quite a good picture, I think, of what it is that you're meaning to achieve. So maybe we should move to this image, which is drawn from your video. And I must admit, it only when I took the screenshot, I realized that it's interesting because you were saying some things about this image as it is shown in the video. And I only realized when I looked at the screenshot, I said to myself, actually, this image doesn't almost say anything. It's just like this state of the art of contemporary music performance, in and very very sort of roughly put. So I think my first question for you would be, and perhaps you could expand on this a little bit more than you did in the video, but how would you articulate the issues associated with this scenario? I mean, what is it that you have experienced as limiting? And where, in this space, do you see that there are, particular things about the practice, say about interpretation, its role in performance, and so on, that you feel that you want to either challenge or address or expand, so maybe that's my first question, and one can think of it also from a more sociological perspective, and just regard this contemporary music field as Howard Beckett would call it, an art world, and that would entail also thinking of the agency of institutions and so on. So it's a way of sort of understanding where one is situated in an art world and how values are created or emerge, because they, the way we assess quality is totally decided inside the art world.
Exactly.
Decided by audiences and institutions and so on. So,
yeah,
all of that. Simple question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we can begin with the repertoire, which is how do we approach this repertoire. So, of course, classical music I involved from Renaissance until beginning of the 20th century, we can say, no? So, when I saw that the limits imposed not by the musician nor the scores, in a way, but also by the aesthetics that are around, or the code of rules, or the book of rules that we have to follow in order to interpret classical music. For example, there was a polemic that I mentioned yesterday with William Christie some years ago, that he said, for example, that all music should not be played by people that don't know all music. So it should be only for specialists. So this is already one barrier that it's quite that is there, in the musical world, that it's over there, Contemporary music, in another hand, we have also the challenge of not having the time to work, because contemporary music involves many different techniques and each composer has their own language. So it's not like one period. It's just like a diverse immensity of information that you have to handle each time you work a piece. So there is no book of rules. There is just the book of rules that is given in each score. Sometimes it's half of the score is only the explanation of how to play the piece, and the other is the notes. So you have this conflict of not working, and also the pity of having scores that are for everyone. You know, a score that is given, that is sold. I mean, that it's a score that has nothing to do with you, but you are interested in the music, so you go there and you find it. But it's not a score that it's made for you, or it's not a composer that work in between your physical capabilities or your musical capabilities in order to create something together. So there's this omnipresence of the musical score that everybody can have access. But at the same time, this accessibility is a contradiction, because there is no direct communication with your body or the embodiment of the instrument in order to perform or to create a work, you know? Because contemporary music should be like creative always in the process of creation. No? And so that's where I go to the new music commissions, that you can go this and you can approach the composer. But to be honest, 80% of the times you receive the score. The other 20 you work with the composer and you find it, which is great. But most of the times you just receive the score. I say, yeah, thank you, I will write for guitar. Then probably after some months, 3 passages, I have doubts, you know, if this works. You know, yeah, it works. Yeah, no, okay, so good. So then you receive the score, and then, okay, so the premiere is in 2 weeks. Okay, so with this. So these limitations were quite difficult for me to understand, because I do all these 3 things, you know, classical music, contemporary, and new music. So to handle all these things, I said, okay, I'm getting too wide, and the instrumental practice is so different. I mean, if you have to play Edgerton and then you have to play Giuliani on the same concert, it's impossible, no? For example, no? Or you know, this kind of things, or okay, I'm going to play a Lachenmann piece and also I don't know, Villa-Lobos, you know, for example, with all these things. So you have to, I mean, your fingers are not working the same, etc. So there's a lot of things. So the rehearsals, of course, this is, also, as I said before, it's a pity. I was, as yourself also, you were a head director of an ensemble, and we always have 3-4 days before the concert, and we go. So if we are lucky, you have the time to play the piece 2 or 3 times, or you have a series of concerts, you can chain 3 performances, but the preparation is not good enough. So, I mean, I was always disappointed that I had to program, if I really loved the piece, I knew that I had to program it like 8 times and in 2 or 3 different periods in order to get the final performance a good performance. Because to reunite 5-7 musicians, etc., so it's very difficult, and it doesn't make any favor to the music, doesn't make any favor to the musicians, it doesn't make any favor to the composer. So it's just a world of economic exchange that you have to go there, do the concert, and then you leave. So there is no profound connection with the music, because it's just on this merely pure concert art scene, no? Concert scene, you know, and also, you know, the liberty of choosing the music. Also, it's very difficult with festivals and everything. So I mean, and the performance is that's where I was going, you know. So performance, where to find a place to perform the pieces. When you go to festivals, you say, yeah, I would like to play in this festival. Okay, thank you very much. Here is a repertoire. You have to play these composers, and you have 20% of liberty that you can choose something. The rest is you have to play what I said. So you don't find, you are working for others, and of course you are happy to work for others, but when you don't have a liberty, I mean, we're talking about art, and we're not talking just an economical exchange or a business, you know. Unluckily now festivals are working like business, and they have to handle the grants, the city grants and the state grants and European grants. So you have to make a program that fits all these economical needs, and in order to make it work, which is very hard. I did that for 10 years, hand in face, and it's very difficult to program. But nevertheless, there's always a gap of liberty that can be taken when you invite someone or when you try to collaborate with musicians. And this mainly, it's not done because of laziness. I think there is a laziness in the programmers and the agents that are just say, okay, let's do the same thing. Let's do this composer that is, I've seen this composer 3 or 4 times on Facebook, so I'm going to program him, you know? It's like that, it works like this. So it's very, very, very depressing, no? When you really want to incorporate a piece and you want to play this and you want to get inside. So what happened is that how do I try to create a way, like a diverse way. With the plastic extensions, I say, okay, this can give me an openness to really get inside the pieces and at the same time create my own space of performing. So besides the concert recordings and the solo chamber music. You know? I don't know if I answered.
Well, yes,
No.
and that you started out in the institutional end, in a sense, right? With the structures and how they shape performance in contemporary music. Art worlds, and that seems useful. I mean, I think it's good, perhaps to continue also to work on articulating, you know, what it is that you found to be artistically problematic, but also, you know, challenging. And exactly this potential that you just mentioned. We will talk more about that, because I think that, of course, this is the most interesting part, and it's something that I think we can all see that it's in there. The potential is there, and it would be good to talk about that a little bit further later, maybe. But if we stay with this image for a moment, because now we talked much about the overarching structures. But we didn't talk so much about the central part of the image, the one about practicing, about interpreting scores, about performing. So is there anything in there that you think informs your ideas for the plastic extension and the PhD project?
I mean, basically all the plastic extensions come exactly from the instrumental practice. So what I did in a way was to the performance and mostly the performance of working was a gleaning phase, was a phase where I have material to produce the plastic extensions. Also associated with the rehearsal. So when you mean is rehearsal instrumental practice, there are a lot of technical hacks we use. So memory codes and stuff that we say, okay, this finger goes this, or a little extension, or I have to change, there is a cross finger. So a lot of movements, you know, like forced ergonomics, you know, you have to find a way to hack the instrument in order to perform what is written, because sometimes the music, I mean, most of the pieces that I play are perfectly written, but also, for example, on the Ferneyhough piece, there are a lot of things that you have to choose. You have to choose what you do, this or this note. And it often happens on concert that you have to do it. It's just, am I too fast? Am I too slow? Can I do both? Can I try to do this? So all these ideas, I said, okay, it's a pity that we're not using these ideas, that they are not present, that they're not evolving. They just stay here behind, and it's like the atelier of the workshop of the interpreter. So why not make like an open workshop, open the studio, an open studio of the performer? So this material gathered through this practice, let's impregnate them into objects. So one of the things that I was very amazed was the memory. So in order to achieve a passage, you have to play, but you have also the memory of the failure. So the memory of failure can come at any moment, but it's always present. So it's like a phantom that it's always there. And this thing also is very important in plastic objects. Plastic objects also have memory. So you can impregnate the objects with memory. For example, last thing that I work with clay. So when you're working with the clay before it's cooked, if you have like a little fissure, crack, a little crack, you are mostly going to have it after it's cooked, because the clay has memory. So happens also at the same time when you're working a piece, you say, okay, now I'm good with this passage. But you remember that sometimes you were having like one finger was not doing this or the strain this, and most of the times these things can happen. So this association of the plastic material, the memory of the plastic material and the memory of the human body and the muscle memory and the memory of the brain memory can create a cycle of objects that you can work, and it's like an open world to develop plastic extensions, right? Yeah, so mainly that's, yeah.
Exactly, because that's, I'm sure we're going to return to this again, because this notion of embodiment and its many functions, right? So embodiment as a way of interpreting the word in its entirety, right? Embodiment as our ways of listening multimodally to music, which I think is, when you think of it, actually quite essential for a project like yours. What does this multimodality actually entail in our interpretation of music? All of these things, some of which go back to, I don't know if you read the anthropologist Tim Ingold.
No.
Because his work, so he's very fascinated with craft. So he's written a number of very strong texts on weaving, which I think you would potentially find useful, because what he does in many of these texts is he's sort of reversing the idea of what knowledge is in culture. And he's saying if we know how to do this, then we know.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's very deeply related, I think, to the aims that you have, or the mechanisms that you want to visualize or make visible through the plastic extensions, are very much related to that type of reflection on the role of craft in society. Yeah.
I was just some days ago, I came across a very interesting French philosopher, Gilbert Simondon. He talks about transduction, and he was thinking, he was explaining that the objective of mechanicity, so objects that have only one purpose, said, no, we should hack them and we should try to make them have a double purpose or triple purpose. So it comes from, industrial design, just industrial designing things that can be, a refrigerator can be also something else, or a car can be help, so this kind of way of thinking also helps in in plastic extensions and in music, so these multimodal things also work in a way that you can correlate different uses of the material we're generating, because we're constantly generating material, and these files of memories and files that we have, all these can be used. So this transmodality, and also conceive now the piece. Each time that I work a new piece, I'm already having this idea. So when I work, I say, how can I work. So when I'm practicing, so the practice has changed a lot. Also, my ear when I play, it's just merely ear. Before I had this, I had too much information when I was playing. And now that I have put them apart, this information is outside, I can really concentrate only on the sound when I'm performing. And it has been like a very liberating for me.
I think I can relate to that. It's something that I've felt happen through working quite a lot with choreography. More sort of multimodal ways of thinking of what performing is seems to allow a very different type of focus when performing. It's something we can speculate on another time and not delve into now. Let's move a little bit more inside your project. So you have a few citations in this nice video we talked about before, which the audience has not seen. And you have a couple of citations there that are helpful, I think, in bringing forth what it is you want to achieve with plastic extensions and that practice. I would add that a little bit of what we're looking at here is also a way of further conceptualizing what it is you do.
Yeah.
And that these citations we will soon read, they're a little bit more like mottos, saying, this is a very nice way to phrase what I'm interested in. But it's not part of a theoretical framework that allows you to say, I know why this is interesting. I know why this does something to the listener, to the viewer. You see what I mean? So there's a potential, I think, in taking your project further, just by perhaps reflecting on it from multiple perspectives. Like, think of the art worlds, what's in them, but what's in this thing with embodiment? So that type of questions might be very useful. And I know you are thinking of these things. We will soon see another slide. But here you're citing Schweitzer.
Yeah.
Who says, art is the transmission of aesthetic associations of ideas. The more complexly and intensely the conscious and unconscious concepts and ideas of the artist communicate themselves to us through his artwork, the deeper is the impression. I'm quite sure you're inspired by the first sentence, but also the last one. It is then that he succeeds in stimulating others to that vivacity of imaginative feeling which we call art, in contradistinction to what we hear and see and experience in our ordinary moments. So this, I can see how it is useful, but I would say that, this is a motto for you. Yeah,
it's a decorative, ornamental.
It's a decoration, but it's a good one. So I will be citing you twice. Because you gave me access to a draft text.
Yeah.
I say this to the audience as well. This is not a published paper. This is a draft text, which is in progress. And it's reflecting on the nature of artistic research and artistic practice. And you say, nowadays, when we add the word research after art research, we enter directly to an experimental terrain where art may be used to test various hypotheses, supposed, able, and capable to push the boundaries of art practice and self-criticism, quote, an experimental machine articulating sense and sensation through experimentation, end quote. Where I recognize my good friend Paulo Daci's words. A unique field of new practices based on experience that allow the artist to take risks, to find new expressions. And I think this is actually pretty well put. So you have in some ways a good draft paper in progress here. So I'm not citing this to question what you're saying here. No, I'm interested in what you are looking for here. So I think that one thing we should do a little bit in this seminar is just to continue thinking a bit about the thoughts that you are testing in the paper.
The idea, okay, for me it was a redundancy when to say artistic research for me was already a redundancy, saying that art should be already research. And why research should not be artistic? That's the opposite way, I'm not sure. But at least art should be a constant research. It cannot be, we cannot, as I explained afterwards in this draft, I explained that art suddenly enters to a market, so it becomes useful. So you just start to produce. So the research is finished. So you say, okay, I arrived to this formula, and I'm going to sell the formula now, and like cakes, just sell them. So, and then there was this situation, which is, I think we'll go after, of Antonio Cabezón. So Antonio Cabezón was a visually impaired blind Spanish Renaissance organist, composer, and he had, in his catalog, he has different kind of works. So he has the Mass, has all this religious music that has useful art. So it's like building a table, right? And also he has this kind of fantasia, tiento, or ricercares that are just ricercare, also the word research, So that are just like improvisation, that they are outside of the objectiveness or of the useful need of music or of an object. So it's not craft, it's just art. So this dichotomy of way of thinking was probably the first time we dissociated this artistic research and useful art, So, and suddenly now it has become that. I mean, the serialism was the best solution. They say, okay, everybody has this same system, so everybody should work like this. So, but in a way, I was always trying to say that particularity in art practice becomes research in a way. And what I mean is when we do art, and when I do art, when I do music, if I don't feel lost, then I think it's not good. I really need to feel that I'm really getting lost, that I'm really going blindfolded somewhere else. If I don't have that feeling, I think it's not good enough. When there's too much certainty about something, it means that you're probably associating with your personal history. So if you are lost, I think it's quite a good way. And art should get us lost. And research, so artistic research for me is like the same word. It's like a pleonasm, So, yeah, I think, I don't know if I answered the question a little bit, but that's the idea of, for me, artistic research is really to get lost. But in a way, of course, as we are in a institution, we do have to document all this process, and why not associate it with other experiences and try to create new knowledge, Because also, for example, one theme that we touched in the Sustainable Development Conference was of leave no one behind. That's one of the things. And the adaptability of things, adaptabilities, and I said, I'm not sure if we really need to adapt everything to everybody. Maybe we should create new information. We should go and, let's not try to adapt paintings, which is beautiful. I love to, when you touch the paintings for the visually impaired, there is like kind of sculpture. It's beautiful. But we should go there and try to create an art that is completely different. And we should not try to adapt, because it's just going to accumulate history. We should create new patterns of history and new patterns of art. And this artistic research, it's our duty. I mean, we have to do that. if we're not doing that, then no one is going to do this, because we are allowed to get lost.
Exactly. To return to your paper, just one thought. It seems, I mean, right now it has a little bit the structure of a kind of sociologically sort of oriented analysis of music history, right? And you claim that there was a time when art was research, and then it got more and more sort of bound up by capitalism.
Yeah. Exchange, economical exchange.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, it's always good to have an analytical framework for a paper.
Yeah.
I think if you want to make those claims, you will need to do some hard research.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
So that's
one thing to work on.
It's probably good to think of. I mean, there are really good aims, and you have, as you see, everyone can see some good observations and single sort of sections in the text that read very well. But there may be something to work on to make it really totally convincing.
Yeah.
This argument. But there's a lot in here, and we will return to this idea of the experimentation as central to art research a few times. Yes.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but since it seems like we'll move on, a unique field of new practice based on experience is a little bit of a problem that I have with that, because why do new practices have to be based solely on experience? Sure, they can be based on experience, but it can also be creativity, it could be new propositions, it doesn't have to be something that we've actually experienced in the past. Is that not correct?
I can answer how I read it before you.
Yeah.
Because I think there's in Bertrand's project there's a particular interest in art as experience. So I mean, it's a way of saying, well, go home and read Dewey, and maybe have a look at pragmatism, and of course, new pragmatism and Mark Johnson is exactly sort of the foundations for embodiment theory. So there's a lot in there. So I think there's what you're saying here is actually more related to your own practice than to artistic research in general, because then as a general statement, it probably doesn't work, as Mike is saying.
No.
But I think
it's a contradiction, right?
Yeah.
Because the first sentence.
But there's something in your take on art as research.
Yeah, on the practices. I mean, generates experience. Just like trying and trying and trying. Yeah.
Right. It's just because it's written so generally at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like this is the way it must be.
Yeah.
Applied to everything.
Yeah.
In juridical terms, I've taken the wrong role in this session. I will return to questioning. Okay, I think we move on, but we could potentially return to this one later.
Yes.
You say with your next motto, which isn't also, which also
This
isn't
is less
really.
this is less motto, but
You say, and it is useful as an illustration of what it is you want to achieve in your movement from performing the guitar as an interpretation of a score to working in clay as an interpretation of a score. So Oscar Wilde says, the critic is he who exhibits to us a work of art in a form different from that of the work itself. And the employment of a new material is a critical as well as a creative element. It's great.
I think,
As a motto.
Okay.
It really works nicely. But I think, again, that there's a need in a project like yours to get more grounded in a theoretical framework that tells you why you're interested in this.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's. I mean, I'm not saying it's a big problem, but you are at the stage in life and in your PhD project where this will be very useful and actually enjoyable too. I think. I think you will have a lot of fun when you work on that.
Yes. I am already having fun. So.
Yeah. Well, you will have more fun. You will see. Okay. I'm interested in this. I think this is very important. there is not just one art world here. And when you assess quality in artistic research projects, you cannot escape the judgment in the art world. It's essential. So if what you do has force and effect in an art world, it has value, right? Even if it's questioned, you know, it can be that it was too experimental for that art world, and you know, so but it has force and effect. That matters a lot.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So in projects like yours, where the PhD student is working interdisciplinarily and having, in a sense, multiple even personas, you know, you're in some instances you're the visual artist, in other instances you're the guitarist. One needs to think of this. So where am I situated? How does this work? Where is quality assessed? And when and how? You know, all those things are good to think of now, in at this point. You know, so that you have a bit of a trajectory there where you see that, yeah, this project is going to work this way. We will talk again about potential laboratory practices that are sort of more like folded into a science world.
Yes.
And our experimentation in a maybe more sort of particularly researchy way. But then normally in an artistic research project, you would expect there to be this force and effect in an art world at some point.
Yeah.
So it's good to think of how does that happen, where does it happen, and what are your roles? Because I think it would be interesting both for me and the audience also to hear you talk a little bit about your different roles as an artist in visual art worlds and in music art worlds.
Yeah.
So here's
Yeah, I mean, going back to the some 2 slides before, I said that adding the word research to art was something that was for me it should be like it's a pleonasm. It's the same thing. So, but nevertheless, in the art world, when you add this adjective of research or experimental, it kind of creates like a parallel universe of things that are not able to be in the art world because it's experimental, because it's research, so it's not ready, you know. So this is like a work in progress. So it's like your atelier, you know, your workshop, and so this is what I would always like to erase this. I mean, for me, the idea of erasing that barrier between the art world and the research, this is, for me, the most interesting thing to work on. Because if we allow only work, art that it's already done, that it's already knows that it works, we are going to be like we are now, just a consumption, capitalism, economical exchange of material, but there is no curiosity for the people, for the society, in order to see what could happen also, you know, to keep our windows open, to keep our studios open, in order to say, this is very good, this is valuable, this is not good, but the other to erase that border between the experimental and the art. So that's why artistic research for me was like kind of contradictory, you know. So how could I describe the art world in the musical world? I mean, everybody knows. I mean, now, if we want to go now today, after COVID, I mean, it has changed a lot, and probably we'll have less time for rehearsals. We'll have. But we have more music also. There was all this kind of these positives of trying to find these video performances and all these things that for me was not very good for music, you know, to see all these videos on the internet. And also about this one thing that probably between the recordings and ourselves, you know, it's like there is a big problem when we produce videos and when we produce recordings, and this, I think, I mean, me as a little musician, it's nothing, but people like, for example, Maurizio Pollini or Marta Argerich, they have this doppelganger always alive. We have Pollini Liszt Sonata recording, and each time that he goes to play live, he's fighting this doppelganger. I mean, and that's why he gets so nervous. Marta Argerich stopped playing solo. Said, okay, no, I will not do that anymore, because all the recordings were so big. So this big persona, this doppelganger, it's very important. And unluckily, we are forced to do this. And me, in a way, in a very, very, very little way, I have this Fernehof video of playing the Kursschatten video. And for me, it is a pressure each time I play this piece to at least try to do this same version. So it's very, so this musical world we are living now, this and creating these personas that we have on the net, is it's very difficult to handle. And the recordings were that. I mean, that was the first time we started to create this double persona, no? And in a way, for me, to hack these traces recording, for me, was plastic extension. So plastic extension would not create a pressure of myself. It will be exposable, it will be there, but this will not affect my le track, this stage frightness. Because it's an alternative disposition of the performance. So yeah, I mean, that's how I could. I don't know if I answered very well.
I think also the question, there were several questions in here, and I only put one of them in the slide, so I think that confused you. I'm sorry about that. Now, I was really interested in your agency in the music art world and in the fine arts art world, and your path. You know, so I think the audience is very interested to hear a little bit more about you as, you know, this double sort of shall we say double persona artist who is both a visual artist, you know, in a sense, in your own right, so to speak, as a visual artist, and as a guitarist on the other hand, with all the many roles that you have there. So just to think a little bit about, you know, when it comes to what you produce, where does it have its audience once, you know, and so on. That kind of reflection, which of course we cannot get to the bottom of in a seminar like this. But I think it's also it's a very useful reflection to make in any project, in particular when they are interdisciplinary like yours is, because of course the interesting field in your project is in the intersection here, right? That's where things are really exciting, but that's also the difficulty, because you're sort of moving between art worlds in a sense. Maybe in each project you're moving between them.
I mean, the idea is to I mean, at the beginning, of course, it was the guitarist trying to make a visual extension, but nowadays, I mean, for me, it really comes like a very natural. I mean, I don't need to change my cap, you know. I don't have to change the hat, and in a way, it has become very healthy, because I'm working twice at the same time. So I'm working on the visual and I'm working on the music at the same time. So it helps me economize some time, which is good. And sometimes also the idea of knowing. I mean, you see a piece, when you work a piece, you say, okay, this could be plastically extended or not. So these choices come also from the instrumental practice and stuff. I don't know how to answer this question about how do I my agencies in the performance, but I do think that the best for me has been very healthy is to work deeply the music, you know, and to go really inside. And once you are inside this music, it is possible to really perform it and to go beyond the mere almost, to quote, side reading process, no? And this takes time, and unluckily we have less and less time. So this is the difficulty that I find. So maybe the idea is to reduce our repertoire, but try to make it more efficient, no? I mean, will not become like the typical guitarist that has 1 hour and a half repertoire and they travel all the world, no? But in a way, try to deep the contact with the music that you are working on, and then that means in contemporary music, work the good ties with the composer and try to create something. And of course, this always can overcome to a new piece, you know? So it just becomes a dialogue, create different dialogues with composers. And I mean, you never know how it's going to work in the art world or in the festivals and these kind of things. But I mean, you have to do it. And for me, just before Sweden, I had to give classes. I was teaching in a conservatory with small children. And when I had free time, I do all the other stuff, you know. And the other stuff was my work. The other stuff was also with ensembles, was also the concerts. So you have to be constantly trying to be efficient at the same time. So, yeah.
There are many things in here. I think we can leave the question for now. I will just emphasize that I think it's important to return to that type of question. You know, to think of the nature of the interdisciplinarity of the work, and how your artwork creates force and effect in specific contexts. This is a very nice image in your video. It's the kind of image that makes people proud of their PowerPoints when they make them, right? So I was looking at it and I thought, I can almost read my question. All these arrows look greatly interesting, but what exactly do they represent, and how can these interactions be studied and understood? Because I think there's a lot, you know, if you look at the ones that actually all of them are equally interesting, but I went for the small ones. But what is it that actually is happening in the sort of interaction between plastic extensions B and C?
Yeah.
And how does it feed back to the instrumental practice? Is that instrumental practicing, or is it instrumental practice? Is more like performance practice, or what is it?
It's both. I mean, it's just
because it's a little in between. The way you phrase it here is neither nor. So I'm really interested in the relations between these the different instantiations of, you know, the artistic outcomes at certain stages, how one feeds into the other. I think this is what the project, in a sense, is all about. And if anyone wants to understand this, first of all, I think it is you, right?
Yeah.
So you create these things and you say, look, they're related in these ways, and it looks really great. You know, I'm still impressed when I look at the image. But I also feel that you're going to need different methods to figure out what is actually in here. It's not easy. It's one thing to make the image, it's one thing to have a hunch that this feeds back into this. But when you can explain to yourself what it actually does, then you know something.
So okay, just I think I can. Okay. So I mean. So this first, for example, between instrumental practice and performance, I mean, we know this.
Yeah,
I mean,
that one we know.
That's quite clear.
That's the easiest one, but it's damn hard to study.
Exactly. So, I mean, you play and you say, okay, I missed this, and this, so I go back, no? So this creates hacks, creates memories, creates error, and creates this muscle memory that I talked about. So this material can be already deployed in a project of a plastic extension to say, okay, let's take this out. For example, one clear example is the Phantom Errant installation there. Is the two paintings and the little drawing with the stones. For example, you can see all the failures all the process of creating the perfect or the defined or the final version of the music output. So you can see the graphite, which would be like the memory, the muscle memory, the hacks, and all the essays, the tryouts, in order to achieve the ink that is inside. So this what could be like the first plastic extension. Also, that's another passage from this plastic extension. So why not take another passage that I'm having difficulty with this? And it was just a little, very short passage. It's just an extension, literally, but a finger extension between the fingers that I was having problem to articulate in a way. So there was this kind of movement of round movement in order to achieve. So you can see this movement achieved on the, and you can see all the tryouts there. So until we achieve this. And then the plastic extension C, I'm taking for example, was the attack. In order to find, because there's a passage, in both passages you have to, one passage is with the annular ring finger, and the other passage is also with the index finger. So this process of creating the voice, to articulate more the first string than the second one, can be marked. You can see it on the drawing. So the drawing has all the process of how to create that sound, all the process, different images,
Exactly.
There's a very beautiful quote by,
yes,
by Proust that says a person, we remind a person like in different photographies. When you remind a person, you see like a superposition of photographies, and that's how memory works for him. So say when you remember a person, you have several photographies that is several situations, and that kind of fluid vision of the person between different photographies is how you remember a person. It's an Albertine disparu, because you're working with Proust. So yeah, in the sixth, yeah. So it's, and this is very beautiful also to think about this, and also memory for Proust and memory for us, like our muscle memory, how it works. And I think it's a very nice way to put it. And I work photography, not for music, but my photography is always hacked with different movements, with that kind of situation, with this Proust idea of memory.
Let's not go into each of and one of these areas, but if we're looking at this one, in the image, it also goes back again to the instrumental practice. Of course. So can you talk about that?
Okay, so when I was working, for example, because these paintings are very big, so I had to do it on the floor. So I was on the floor drawing. So repeating the gesture like this, like in a big form, and then bringing it down to the small form was so helpful to find the way how to solve this. So these big gestures that I was working on the floor, and then bring it down to the instrument, to the real situation, was really amazing. And so, of course, it helped to clean the passage. So the passage got cleaned just by seeing it from another perspective, in a very big, on the ground and without the instrument, analyzing so it was like a kind of practice, like instrumental practice, but with other elements.
How clean?
Clean. I mean, technically clean, musically clean. No mistakes.
So what actually happened?
It happened that I understood better the movement that I wanted to do. Because here, you are hidden. Sometimes when you have the perspective of the interpreter, you don't see the finger. Or you can see it, but then when you understand, say, yeah, but I'm working this. So it's just analyzing. It's just like taking from another point of view, like this third ear. Like you say, we have a second ear when when you play. When you achieve that notion, it's perfect. But in a way, I try to hack the second ear by the plastic extension. So the plastic extension helps the instrumental practice a lot, a lot.
So that guy over to the right there, who keeps asking questions, who happens to be your supervisor.
Yeah.
Now, Michael Edison would be, I think, a very good discussant when you continue working on these layers in the project, because as he is asking, what did it do?
Yeah.
How did you do it? What actually was the effect of it? Is something that you can research, and so this as the project develops, I think is keep this roadmap and just think every time of what is the feedback?
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
What does it really do?
Yeah. I mean, the idea of this became, as I said in the video, it's an hermeneutic cycle, you know? So, I mean, the pieces, the plastic extensions can generate other plastic extensions, but affect the performance and the instrumental practice. So this circle, it's amazing. Once you live with one piece inside this circle, it's just like endless possibilities of working a piece and endless possibilities of creating more research. I mean, like artistic research, you know, let's call the artistic research inside just one piece or one passage, you know. Just trying to impregnate the performance with this already, you know, to be conscious about this. So being conscious, being aware that there is this possibility, your instrumental practice is going to change immediately. And it happened to me. It really happened to me, yeah. Yeah.
So I think this is the central slide for this seminar. And it will return at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'll just mention, I promised that at the outset, so I need to do it, some projects that are related to what you're doing. So this is Lucia De Rico. She's an Italian guitarist. She has a focus on contemporary repertoires, but plays also early music.
Okay.
She did her PhD at the Orpheus Institute as part of Paolo d'Assis's ERC project. And her thesis has exactly this title, Powers of Divergence. This citation is taken from the research catalog exposition, which accompanies the book.
Okay.
She says about one of the projects, the sub-projects, at the basis of my artistic research project is a conviction that through the performance of written music, it is possible to bring about the force of a given musical work much more strongly than if one just sat down and illustrated the appearance. The citation actually refers to Francis Bacon's paintings, but that's discussed earlier in the text.
Okay.
If the moment comparable to illustration in the case of performance is interpretation, from the start, the objective of my practice has been to produce a resemblance with a given piece of notated music, which I will call the primary work, without passing through the set of rules inherited through the interpretational tradition. This implied a starting set of premises. In the first place, the matter of performance, sounds, gestures, should not be molded ahead of time by the pre-given semiotic units of its score. In other words, the new performance should relate to the primary work without potentially containing any single element of its score. Something should be retained of the work. At the same time, though, resemblance should be suggested through sounds, musical shapes, and gestures unrecognizable as pertaining to the work as a traditional interpreter would approach it. Secondly, it was necessary to somehow fixate the sonic and gestural sequence of the new performance. In doing so, the risk was that instead of fundamentally altering the interpretational of, this would simply re-emerge at a different stage to be shifted somewhere else. From the start, it was very clear that the task was fundamentally different than recomposing a musical work from the past, insofar as a new composition might have asked to be in turn executed or interpreted. So what she's doing, as I think you can see here in her project, she's developing methods of approaching a scored piece by devising completely other methods of realizing it than was originally intended. And it does take form in some instances quite similar to your works. I think you'll find it interesting just to scroll through. You can even go to the research catalog and just see what did she do?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, of course.
What are these pieces like? And they, because they do in a similar way approach performance of classical scores as interdisciplinary artwork.
Yeah.
You know, so that's I think
It's it's kind of the same. Yeah.
it is quite closely related.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think it would be relevant to have a look
Of course.
at this. But of course, she's also carrying out her PhD in the project that Paolo was running at the time.
Yeah, I saw
which-
Paulo's
yeah.
of the Nono piece. He did the
Yeah,
versions. Yeah, which is
yeah,
very
exactly.
Nice, yeah.
Which certainly raises questions that in themselves may be related
Of course,
to
yeah.
your project. You may not agree. I totally disagree with some of his ideas, but they're certainly relevant for you. You should know
Yeah.
what they did.
Yeah.
It's a project that has had a bit of impact in the research world, in music research. And
I mean, in performance, just a little
Yeah.
parenthesis, which was an anecdote that I lived in, was very impressive. There is Kazuhito Yamashita, guitarist. It's a huge, not huge, it's like the immense virtuoso of, it's like Paco Lucia, like the same Paco, almost. So he came to Mexico to a guitar festival, and he came without a guitar, of course, because he doesn't like to travel with the guitar, and he asked for several guitars. So he was in his room, but he never, ever practiced. He just checked the sound. But he was there for a week, and he had the recital with the 4 Ponce sonatas. He never touched the guitar. Goes to the concert with the score and plays. And he said, and then we talked, and he said, yeah, you know, were you bothered by the mistakes, you know, because I'm you know, I did a lot. I said, no, it was very good. He said, you know, I'm practicing now without the score. I just imagine the fingerings in my head, and I try not to touch the guitar, so it can come more natural. So he's working on this. I mean, in a way, not exactly like we are doing, but he's already pre-performing. I mean, he's physically able to do anything, so he doesn't need to practice. I mean, he's not like me that he needs to make the scales. No, the guy is already, he's perfect, you know, in the hands. So, of course, this thing, it was very impressive to see this pre-performance or this performance in the head, just to go there and then play, which is like the non plus ultra of performing, no? I imagine, no? Just think what you're going to do and you do it.
there you go. Yeah, so you'll find, I think, when you continue scanning the field, that there is that type of span, you know, of projects that you can relate to. Now, this obviously is a relatively blurry screenshot from your video.
It is intended to be
yeah,
blurred.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think one reflection I had when looking at this is it's nice how it captures the temporality of music in an entirely different form. You know, and that was where I got going with this one.
Yeah.
You know, and I think what will be useful when you return to your central the PowerPoint with the arrow slide, you know, to think of in what ways this works really. You know, so to go back to the artwork and think, okay, this was the finished thing. And how does that relate to the score?
Okay.
You know, so to do all those things, you know, many times, and do it in very different ways.
Yeah.
I also realized we need to move on. So we could have had here a very long fermata, you know, just to talk about the rather related projects that we've been doing with mocap turned into other forms.
Yes.
I think that could very well be turned into a seminar later, you know, jointly between us, because I did this project called Go to Hell in the R1 reactor, and you know of it a bit. And incidentally, we recorded the mocap in the same studio, but with different technicians. It's very much about the same thing. How do you capture the finger movement but that's of course just the starting point.
Yeah.
What would be interesting is to discuss a little bit the trajectory of the entire piece, both in terms of its data collection, but also even more, I think, of the artistic trajectory.
Yeah, exactly.
Which in the Go to Hell project, it started when I first studied the Rolf Riem Toccata Orpheus. So it goes back all the way to my PhD. You know, so and I made a first installation at that time. You know, as part of my defense. And reformulated that into this new project, which went much more into the choreographic materials. So there's a lot to say about that. Looking at the time, I feel we don't really. I think we shouldn't get obsessed with this now, but it would be really interesting to talk about. It also seems there is. Exactly where you started talking about your project, you know, with your interest in gesture and embodiment. Well, that's the connecting point here. You know, so that was part of a 4-year research project that I did called Music in Movement, which was all about the relation between musical composition and choreography. So there is a shared interest here, which I think it would be good to catch up on that a little bit. And also here there are other quite useful references. And when it comes to exactly this type of piece, we already talked about that last night. There are a couple of choreographic pieces also of the actually one of the Rolf Riem also that's been which are, I think, useful as references. Of course. You know, also the ones that potentially failed can be interesting to consider. So I don't know if you want to throw anything out in relation to this piece before we move on, but because you are in the progress of creating it.
I mean, the idea is that, I mean, to create this choreographic piece, and to recreate these musical situations with the dancers, you know, this, and the technical hacks also, which are very important to apply, because I mean, this is, or to finally give the version that I wanted to do, that I'm not able or not capable to do, which is to give my best version of the piece like this. I mean, and it's the same thing with the Tientos by Antonio Cabezon. It's exactly the same. When I play the Tientos and Antonio Cabezon, it's too many. It's impossible to keep all the voices sounding. It's for organ, so it's impossible to keep all the voices. So I said, this would be my best interpretation, but I will not be able. I will not be me playing. It's just an installation that gives my best performance of the piece. So in a way, that's what I want to achieve, at least with these two projects: the Kursschatten Drei, not Zwei, Drei, and the Tientos, the Tientos Topográficos.
You see, I've also been fascinated for a long time with the idea of inviting a listener to multiple temporal perspectives on, or sort of entrance ways to a piece. So that you actually perform it in a space and you can experience it as it was conceived, but also can access it. So I've done that several times, for instance with the Rolf Riem. You know, to also provide listening stations where you can look at, you know, composer and performer rehearsing the piece, discussing it, talking about its conceptual layers and so on. And one thing I wanted to mention about Toccata Orpheus, or just as a with reference to Toccata Orpheus, just to mention that layer in your own project, which is to do with metaphor. Because I think also there, you know, if you go to embodiment theory, you could find ways, you know, entryways to understand the role of metaphor and language in your project, because there is a role. I can see that. But to understand it, I think go to Mark Johnson and George Lakoff, metaphors we live by, for instance.
Okay.
And, you know, because it's the way they're conceptualizing, you know, our embodied understanding of metaphor
Yeah.
is, I think, fundamental to understand what it
Yeah.
does. For instance, in music. So, and in Toccata Orpheus is a good example. You know, it's one of those things that you want to give the listener the possibility of understanding how actually
Works.
and how this prose poem that Rolf Riem wrote was so central for him when he composed the music, and that he has these little inscriptions in the score where where parts of the myth are sort of embodied by the performer in the act of playing the piece. It kind of changes your entire perception of the piece when you start to realize this. So it's impossible to experience that in a normal performance.
Exactly.
If you just have some, if we return to the context of contemporary music performance and that art world and the concert halls and you know all these constraints on what it is to perform a scored piece, then you know the multi-temporal sort of exhibition or or exposition, you know, talking with the research catalog sort of language, it allows for a completely different entry point for a viewer. So you don't need to play the piece to understand these things, which otherwise is necessary. And I think, in a sense, if the way I understand your project, it's about doing exactly that. You know, so to give the viewer the sense of what it is like to play the piece and experience the piece as if you were a performer of the piece, but without having to go through all the hassle of playing it.
I mean, nevertheless, I think it's important that, for me, the thing is that it has to be really the performer. I mean, that's why I don't do collaborations. Normally, people collaborate with us. But I think that the intimacy of the work is what I want to show. The intimacy of the working, of the rehearsal, and the experience, the personal experience. I would not ask a choreographer to make a choreography about what I'm working. That's my very own personal idea. I'm not saying that everybody should. But for my perspective, I thought it was better it would be more honest, even if it's like, I'm not a choreographer, I'm not a painter, I'm not a sculptor, but it is like that. And I'm not trying to achieve a canonized standard of technical, plastic or visual art. I'm just producing. And the honesty in that is what I think is what makes particular a work of art. I'm not a fantastic sculptor, but it is what it is. And that's why I think it's important for my perspective, to keep it that way.
I hope the Zoom session is being recorded. Because if you go back to this 3 minutes before this moment and transcribe what you said, I think you'll find something useful to describe your work. That was very well put. Let's move on. So I don't think we have time to dwell so much on this, but I worked with the original Harry Partch instruments, and it's a very very beautiful experience to explore them.
Of course.
And just seeing this actually immediately reminds me of Partch. I don't know if it's at all an inspiration for you, but there's certainly a lot to be inspired by.
He's a reference. I'm not inspired directly by him, and I love the Hitchhiker. It's a perfect piece. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing piece. It's really amazing piece. And no, I mean, the idea was to create, as I said before, my incapacity of playing this piece correctly, to display it in a way as a white cane, to be like the most how do you say, to be ironic as it is, just to go through the finger and play the piece, instead of kind of suffering. I was because I played yesterday the Trittientos, And I remember why I wanted to do the plastic extension. I said, this is so difficult to play. I mean, my God. So I said, this is why I said, I really need to make a better version that I'm impossible to do. I mean, it's impossible for me to perform this piece correctly. So I said, I'm going to deploy it in this way so I can enjoy the piece also, you know, not only suffer while playing, you know, and make the people enjoy this performance, no? In a way, performare, you know, take form.
Exactly.
And
Great.
Yeah.
It seems to be a really beautiful project, I must say.
Yeah, I mean, there's the visually impaired involved, and then the hearing impaired involved, and it's very important for me. It's very important to work, but to unveil knowledge. No, I mean, we are always with the visually impaired. I mean, not to take as an ornamental part of my research, but in a way, I think they know things we don't do. No. Hearing impaired also, they know things we don't. And that's when I said, when we said, leave no one behind, you know, this sustainable development motto.
Yeah, there you go.
Could be hacked not to adapt, but to create different patterns of art and music for the hearing impaired, for the visually impaired. Not to adapt, I'm going to make no, just create something new and create new patterns and see what happens, get lost.
Is there, I wonder, a kind of socially engaged aspect to your practice as a performer? I was just there was this snippet in one of the videos where you're conducting a group of
special needs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm very attached to special needs and I mean, I had a personal story. When I was young, a teacher said that I was handicapped. So the 1 year I was studying with them. Each time I go to school, the teacher said, "Okay, go to the room," and I was there. And I spent 1 year. I was very happy, and I understood a lot of things, and I understood this particularity, and that was amazing. I said, it's like in the classroom I would see everybody equal, but in the other classroom I would see everybody different. So there was not. So this particularity was very shocking for me, and I really said, I should be also particular. I mean, this particularity was also, and I think that the handicap, of course, is now it's a word that is completely useless. I mean, it's old word. So the special needs, the word special, it is quite attractive for me. And it is special because there's not one singular case similar. Could have similarities, but you cannot say that it's the same case. It's impossible. Special needs are really, each case is different. And this idea of going through our normalized world with their particularities, and also, which is the most important thing for me, the hacks they use to live in this normalized world. So these technical hacks that they use in order to survive, to adapt, this is what really I love, and this is what I want to go there. I want to get lost inside those technical hacks they have.
That's great. I mean, I did have a hunch that this was the background to this project. I think when you continue working on it, and also when you start writing about it, it would be very important to articulate your own relation to the field, because I think what you just said is essential, and so it's not just about looking into the ethical considerations of the project itself, but it's more about, as is any good qualitative research, to really situate yourself so that the reader can understand what relation you have, to the artistic practice and to to the people involved in the whole situation. So I think there's some good work to be done there, because it will strengthen the project a lot. You know, the more clearly you articulate this, the better. So it is it's a beautiful project.
So that's
but it's also it's complex to do projects like this as research, because you need to be very careful how you design it, so that it is actually ethically sort of monitored, you know, when you design it, and that you make transparent all the steps, you know. So it's very important how you write up projects like this.
This is why I've been pushing all of them to work with people who are experts in the field. So you're working with the person.
Jan Erik Olsson, who is a visually impaired historian. You know, he was in Copenhagen at the Museum of Blind for the Blind, and he was. I knew about him because he had a conference in Paris, talking about, because the visually impaired have their history, their historical objects that are made of clay expressions. So there was a history of objects created by the blind. So it could be figures, heads, etc. And normally it was, you know, for people to touch. But now the ironic thing was that they was put into with windows, so you're not able to touch them. So I said the sense of history is lost for them, because you are not able to touch them, and you're not able to touch them because they are becoming precious, you know. But you are erasing history. In a way, you are doing this with history, for the blind at least. I mean, putting them into windows is just saying, no, for the sake of the visual, for the sake of us, we put them in windows so that we can see it, which is completely obnoxious in a way. No? It's completely stupid to do that. So that's how I met Jan Erik Olsson, which is a dear friend, and he's helping me with the tests. I send you all the files that we're going to do, and so that's the idea. And I mean, it's long. It's a long process, but I think it's going to be a beautiful one and a very interesting also. I hope. You hope us.
Great. It's possible to see quite long trajectories in what you already have planned. Is like the entire PhD project.
In a way, I think.
There's several of these projects, like this one and the previous, are big projects. So.
I expect to work a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I'm moving.
There's no way out of it now. I promised I would cite you again.
Yes.
This is not your heading, it's mine. What is the place in the world of the artwork produced in artistic research, you say? If we take the clear exposition of Heidegger's concept of art, the origin of the work of art, the subcategory of outputs created in artistic research cannot make part of the open, nor would emerge from the ground with the same position as artwork, but even more importantly, the power of destruction in the publicity of the work of art would be veiled by the research connotation, sheltered by the allowance word of research, not exposing it in the open. Should we protect this protected art, skyddad konst, from the art scene in order to give liberty inside the shelter, inside the cave, inside the experimental machine, that's the quote again from Paulo, that allows the artist today to push boundaries away from the pseudo-economical exchange of the art scene. I think what would be useful to discuss here is actually the notion of the laboratory as a potentially sheltered, temporarily sheltered place where experimentation may take place. And there's a good book about the artistic research laboratory by Ben Spatz.
Okay.
He's a theater scholar and practitioner. and a good one, and he's also an embodiment theory sort of scholar, and he's got a couple of really good books on that perspective. It's totally interwoven in this book. It's a very particular practice that he describes in this book called Creating a Laboratory. It's like from last year or something. It's quite a recent book. It's very much to do with an audiovisual theater practice. So it's a particular and very situated example of what the laboratory might be, but it's a very well argued one. So it might be worth looking at, just to think a little bit more about what would it be, this place where experimentation is done out, sort of sheltered from the art world. You could think of it, I believe, one could, this looks much too clean, compared to what it really is, of course, but if you think of the artistic researcher as situated, in a sense, in a liminal space between art worlds and science worlds, it can be a way of better understanding what it is one does and what the potential is in exactly that position. And it can be a way of understanding what that laboratory is, because it might physically be situated in the art world. But you might be creating things that are, in a sense, sheltered because you are in the practice of creating things, within a PhD. You don't even need to do an exhibition, maybe.
Exactly.
So those are some of the defining factors in creating a laboratory situation, I think, in the arts. But then you're still, you still have to live with the question that we looked at before. How does this actually get assessed eventually in the art world? When you look at your PhD as a whole, what is produced within the laboratory and what is actually eventually also assessed in an art world? That could be a very simple way of putting it. And it's something you don't need to answer at all. It's just something to think of. But I think, so obviously you're all thinking, this picture makes no sense, right? Because experimentation in science and experimentation in the arts is absolutely not the same thing. But in artistic research, there is a potential for an overlap, because you can carry out experiments of both kinds. So that's where this kind of liminal space idea is useful, because it's a way of thinking, what is it we do as artists who are doing research? Well, if we don't make experiments, what do we do? Hang around?
Exactly.
I think it's really worth thinking of, what is it to do research as an artist? And what is this place where we do it? And of course, so one could argue that it's useful to reverse the experimental and the subjective and say, well, this also makes sense. It makes perfect sense. The subjective is part of anything you do in the science world, even anything in the hard sciences. So it's not, I mean, as all images, this image fails. But the idea of looking at those two perspectives in one's own practice, I think is useful.
I mean, there's a recent article my wife told me about, she read, and there was some poets criticizing Edison because he discovered how color was created, saying that, but 100 years after, saying that he unveiled the mystery of color, and so these kind of things, the artists were criticizing science, in order to why they unveiled the mystery that would have been beautifully dressed, that keeps being a mystery, So and I think in a way this makes sense with this the science world and the art world, how this conflict can become, can be there, very present.
Exactly. It's good to understand the nature of these science worlds, I think.
I mean, this is why, Bertrand, you're saying, don't try to make me into a scientist. This is exactly what we're talking about here.
Exactly. I think we move on. time flies. You can go deeper into this, and it's a way of returning to where we were at the start. So what is the knowledge that you are creating in this project?
Yeah.
It's very much situated in the left end corner of this image, right? I mean, it's so much to do with the embodied knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's interestingly rich in terms of producing material and performative artistic output. So for me, I think a big question, which I think is being answered, but we don't really see it yet in your outputs, is how does a multi-method design, which I think is part of many of these studies that you do when you bring other scientists in also, how is that bringing all these forms together?
Yeah, I think the idea is to make, as I said, for me the most interesting thing is particularity, you know, and I would be against using always the same method, and it would be completely unethical to say that all pieces should plastically extend in the same way. So each piece should produce different outputs. That's the most honest thing. So if you're going to produce different outputs, the multi-method design has to be different each time. So it would be impossible to create like a common method or a methodology that always goes through, because it's impossible. I mean, we're talking about art. We're not talking about numbers. And although numbers also could be artistic, but in a way, to create a definite method would be absurd, I think. And it's always, each piece has to create its own method. And when you perform a work, it's like that. I mean, there was this. Going again to the things. You know, Martha Argerich, there's an interview with Charles Dutoit, and they asking, so you work technique? How many times? How much? No, I don't work technique. Really? How is it possible that you? No, I work with the pieces. You know, for her, each piece has its own technique. So it's not that she makes scales. No, she works each piece, and for her is that. So it's each piece has a method to work. So you cannot apply like a general thing. Okay, and I think that's the thing.
Yes, we're not proposing a grand narrative here. So I've been working with them on devising methods for each different project, and they might have similar overarching concepts, ideas, but not necessarily so. Like some of the voice stuff that Felicita is working with, the largest umbrella will be voice, but with Bertrand, it's going to be, with each piece could be potentially very different. So I think that's very exciting.
And that's where we get to the last slide, because I think there's in the project great promise, you know, in designing multi-methods to approach each and one of these relations in the project. It's complex, but it's extremely, I think, valuable. You know, if you can get to a level of resolution in your analysis, in your writing, and in your production, so that you can talk, some of which you already mentioned in this seminar here, as quick reflections. But if you were to be able to systematically sort of assess this in your processes, you would create a lot of valuable knowledge.
I know what you mean. Okay.
That's my final word. I read my script too quickly. But I think that's that would be my summary. I think the material that you've laid out, you know, to create in the coming years is very rich in scope and potentially in depth. And I think it's the depth, you know, that one wants to see, you know, emerge as you continue. Okay, it was another way to end.
Thank you.
I'm ending. So we have a little bit of time, yeah? 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Any questions, comments? Kent? Nothing. Yeah.
Thanks. No, I was just curious about the video installation, the plastic extension made by you from the Villa Lobos study. Am I right in saying that it belongs to the arrow from music score directed to the plastic extension, or not? Because I guess that it hasn't much to do with performance, and maybe it's the only one up to now.
Yes, yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, the thing is, okay, how it all became. So yeah, it's true. In a way, during the confinement, the lockdown, during the lockdown, I went back to my basic technique, and I went to the Villa Lobos study, so I was working each day. So I hurt even my finger at one extension. So, and what it was this just before the summer, and in Paris, where I live, in my window, I have this Fête des Tuileries, which is like games and stuff like this. And from my window, this is the image that you see. That's what I see from 10 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the night. So 12 or 1. So I hear constantly and this was already on the summer. So I already stopped working. So I said, and when I was doing this ostinato piece, it reminded me of this circle, you know, like this going and going through and trying to, and all the situation, of course, I said, yeah, but it was a posterior probably. I was not working the piece and said, I'm going to do this. It was a posterior recreation of But in a way, when I was seeing this, it just was going to drive me crazy. And it's like an ostinato, like a constant ostinato during the whole summer. You have that like 14 hours a day, you know, which is crazy, you know. And yeah.
And I don't think you explained, but the etude number 5 is an ostinato etude. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But because maybe this adds also the audience perspective, which was almost yours.
Yes, yeah.
With the wheel. That's also interesting. It's not only the performance by yourself, but also what the audience perceives from a performance. Because in that case, the focus is on the structure of the music, not only the performance of that.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of the performance because it's an ostinato, and when you repeat, you're always coming back to the ostinato. I mean, there's not one part that there's no ostinato. It's you always have tita, tita, tita. So this tita, tita, tita is always present, and even when you stop working and you come back from the beginning, you have. It's not like a passage; it's the complete piece. So it's like it's like a windmill, no? I mean, always going. Yeah. So yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes, I was really interested in another aspect, which is when you say you did something which was very materic to make a passage more clean.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if this could be seen as a kind of psychomagic ritual for you.
I mean, in a way.
And I mean, because sometimes you say that the artist is similar to a bruja, or how to say in English.
Like a witch, sorcerer.
Yeah, sorcerer or something.
Yeah.
So I was asking if there is also this kind of aspect that you maybe would like to explore, or if you think about this.
I mean, it's quite cathartic. I mean, when you do this kind of plastic extensions, for me, are quite cathartic, you know, in a way. So most of the frustrations, the technical frustrations, I give them away in the plastic extension. So it's in a way cathartic, and of course, this cathartic process is kind of also trances, you know, like a kind of trance. You know, when I was on the ground doing this, you know, I was going with the doing this gesture once and again and again and again and again and again. So in a way, yeah, you're in trance, and I was completely alone on the floor. In a complete different, as if I was inside in a microscope is a very little me inside the guitar looking at the gesture, you know, and drawing the gesture, you know. So in a way, yes, it's kind of trance.
You kind of lose the perception of time, I
yeah,
guess.
completely, yeah. When you're working,
He quoted Ingold, which is one of my idols, together with Proust, actually. And I was thinking about Ingold when he says like you used to think at an object or thing as, I mean, an object when an artifact as something that you put a structure on. So you have material and you put a form on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's your part when you play and you want to master some passage. But on the other side, I think it's the opposite when he says that you kind of tune into the frequencies of the energy of the world. And then the material emerges and the thing is just a knot of all these lines. They create kind of a knot. So when you're doing your artwork, your visual art pieces in these kind of psycho magic rituals, then you are making these lines emerge. So you lose a kind of control in some way.
In a way, yeah, of course. But I mean, the thing that why I insist that has to be the same interpreter doing the music, doing the plastic extension, is that your hands work differently to create the same thing. To create one thing, your hands are working in a different way. It could be also with the mouse, just editing, but in a way you're working different. So this kind of working differently makes the magic also, you know, like trying to hack in this way, trying to resolve things in another way. So as they say, you know, if the door doesn't open, go through the window, you know, a little bit this, you know, which is very stupid to say, but but in a way it's like. Yeah,
but this is a change, since you say it many times, it's a change of perspective also. Seeing things from another side, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and we should, I mean, as I said, don't adapt, you know, this, because normally what we do, okay, we take one note out, no? I'm going to take one note. I am not going to keep this voice, you know, these kind of things, we do it always as a performers. So to say, okay, instead of doing that, you know, let's go into the place and go there, you know, and don't adapt, create new knowledge.
Any final questions?
Any final comments, questions? Anybody from the audience on Zoom? No. Probably not. I guess no. Okay.
Mine.
Well, great discussion, guys. Thanks. Lots to think about, lots to talk about. Kent and I will continue the conversations with Bertrand.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Stefan, and congratulations, Bertrand. Big hand. Yay!
Thank you. And we're off.